Ici Londres. Veuillez écouter maintenant quelques messages personnels.
Hello, and thank you for joining me for this talk. In today's world where communication is so easy, it's sometimes also easy to forget an era when it was often intermittent, slow and dangerous. But for those who do remember, it's heartening to know that people working in the city of Westminster during the Second World War played a very important part in keeping communication open in such difficult times. The medium of communication I'm going to look at today is radio. And over the course of the war, the BBC French service was housed in Broadcasting House, Portland Place, Bedford College, Regent's Park, and Bush House, Aldwych at various times. Today, these are all in the city of Westminster. Radio had become a huge means of mass communication during the 1920s and 1930s. And during the Second World War, the BBC's broadcasts to the millions of people in occupied Europe were a beacon of hope in a very dark world where the occupier controlled the main sources of news and the main sources of disseminating news with an iron fist. France was a hugely important part of this process when the words Ici Londres, this is London, on the radio meant so much, especially as the very act of listening to these broadcasts could lead to severe punishment and even death. Today's talk will look at some of the aspects of the broadcasts, the effect they had on listeners, and how feedback of their reactions to them managed to get through to Britain. The BBC's broadcast to France really got started, or they really started to increase, I should say, in May 1940, when the country was being invaded. And on the 18th of June 1940, General Charles de Gaulle made his famous rallying cry to those living in a country which was just a few days away from signing an armistice with Germany. This broadcast took place from one of the fourth floor studios in BBC Broadcasting House. And by July 1940, the French actor and director Michel Saint-Denis had been recruited to establish a team of French nationals who would form the nucleus of the corporation's broadcasts to a now defeated France. In order to avoid retaliation to his family in France, he adopted the pseudonym of Jacques Duchesne, which was a reference to Père Duchesne, a satirical newspaper published in revolutionary France. Saint-Denis came to Britain in the mid-1930s, where he directed at the Shakespeare Memorial Theatre and in the West End, with his Twelfth Night even being televised from the Phoenix Theatre in January 1938. After the war, he worked at the Old Vic and then in New York for a number of years. Other recruits included Pierre Bourdon, whose real name was Pierre Maillot, who chose Bourdon, the name of a village he knew as a child. Before the war, he had worked in the London offices of Havas, the French advertising agency. And in spring 1944, he transferred to active service with the Free French Forces. Then there was Jacques Borel, whose real name was Jacques-Henri Cotens, and he was an actor, director, and author. Jean Marin, whose real name was Yves Morvan, was a journalist who had also worked for Havas in London before the war, and in 1943 he rejoined the Free French Naval Forces. Jean Oberlé was an artist, painter and journalist who was responsible for many of the slogans adopted by Radio Londres, such as Radio Paris Mans, Radio Paris Mans, Radio Paris et Allemand. Radio Paris lies, Radio Paris lies, Radio Paris is German, to the tune of La Cucaracha, often sung on air, much better than I can do it, by the humorist Pierre Dac. And then there was Maurice Schumann, another ex-employee of Havas, who made over 1,000 broadcasts to France, usually with appeals to and information for the resistance. In 1940, 1941, all those French people participating in broadcasts knew that they were taking a great risk for themselves and their families in France, as there was no guarantee that Britain would win the war at that stage. At the same time, these transmissions from London disproved the German claim that most of London had been destroyed in the September 1940 to May 1941 Luftwaffe heavy bombing campaign on the capital. Now, a typical evening's programme would be from 8:15 to 8:25, a news bulletin. From 8:25 to 8:30, Honneur et Patrie, Honour and Homeland, which would be hosted by Maurice Schumann on behalf of General de Gaulle and the Free French authorities. From 8:30 to 9, Les Français parlent aux Français, the French speak to the French, which was opened by Jacques Duchesne, with Jean Marin commenting on various news items. There then followed songs, sketches and slogans, the latter to be used against the German or Vichy government authorities. Here a word about France. After its defeat from June 1940, France was divided into an occupied zone, roughly the whole of the north, and an unoccupied zone, roughly most of the south. The latter formed part of the État français, or French state, headed by Marshal Philippe Pétain, with its capital in Vichy. On November the 11th, 1942, the Germans occupied the whole of France, with some territory being held by Italy, but the Vichy government remained in place as a puppet regime. Another popular programme was the weekly La Discussion des Trois Amis, in which Jean Oberlé played the pig-headed skeptic, Pierre Bourdon was clear-headed and sharp, and Jacques Duchesne acted as a sort of conciliatory referee as they discussed current events from differing points of view, from the sceptical to the optimistic. On Fridays from January 1941, Jacques Borel presented Courrier de France, dedicated to letters received by the BBC from France. Well, amazingly, up to the 11th of November 1942, the BBC was receiving around 100 letters from France per month. With the German occupation of the Free Zone, only 32 letters got through between November 1942 and February 1943. After this, the number continued to diminish until nothing was being received by the spring of 1944. The fact that any mail at all was allowed to leave the country for Britain can only be explained by the efforts of a few sympathetic censors who allowed this to happen. One of these even added the following comments to an envelope sent from Lyon in late July 1940. "All my best wishes to you all, to you who are brave enough to fight for freedom." Even so, the only way for letters to be channeled to Britain would have been via a neutral country such as Switzerland, Spain or Portugal. And of course these employed their own censors too, as did the British authorities. Once here, they represented an invaluable source of information on the state of public opinion and morale in occupied France. And this information was used by those broadcasting to the country from London. Often, Jacques Borel would encourage would-be correspondents to make several copies of their letters and then ask them to mail these in different post boxes in different areas, if possible, on the off chance that at least one might get through to London. A few letters were not at all supportive of what was being done in London. For example, one addressed to Winston Churchill, care of the BBC, from Madame Genevrier in Saint-Étienne on the 20th of August 1942, told him in no uncertain terms to keep his nose out of French affairs. In allowing this one out of the country, did a sympathetic censor show where his or her true sympathies lay. Of course, there were letters from other supporters of the new order in German-controlled Europe, but these formed a tiny, tiny number among those received. Practically all were supportive of Britain and its allies. And a good example of this, and one that still brings a lump to the throat, is a letter posted in early March 1941, which arrived at the BBC on the 9th of May. This was from Ginette, a young girl living in the Aube region of northeast France. Along with her best wishes for Britain and its ultimate victory, she enclosed a pressed flower from her garden. Hopefully Ginette survived the war and lived to see a free France again. On the 4th of September 1942, William Tell, managed to send a letter to London via Bern in neutral Switzerland. He was an engineer who had permission to travel in both zones of France, and in his letter he sent details of some of the ways that Jews were being treated in Paris and the surrounding areas. This included the obligatory wearing of the Star of David, the liquidation of Jewish-owned businesses, roundups by the police, and the start of deportations. Starting with the 1st of January 1941, when the BBC asked French people to stay off the streets between 2 and 3 p.m. in Vichy France and between 3 and 4 p.m. in occupied France, there were other various appeals which were widely followed to mark in different ways such important dates as again the 1st of January, the 11th of May, the 14th of July, and the 11th of November during 1941, 1942 and 1943. For example, on the 11th of May 1941, Joan of Arc Day, the operation was successful in the two zones, with at one stage the police having to arrest some of those taking part after fairly large, silent crowds gathered in the Tuileries Gardens and in the Champs-Élysées area in Paris. However, one campaign that really caught on was the request to make as much use as possible of the V for victory or victoire signs in public places. These could be scrawled, chalked, or even painted on walls, roads, hoardings, etc., or handed out as tracts. And although the campaign originated in Belgium in January 1941, it had spread to France by March. The BBC supported the process by incorporating the Morse code for the letter V, ... into one of its call signs, using the opening bars of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, which had the same rhythm as this, da-da-da-da. The Germans reacted by confiscating more and more radio sets and jamming broadcasts from London, arresting perpetrators when they could, and fining towns where large numbers of Vs were placed in public places. For example, in May 1941, in Bourg-Achard in the Eure department in Normandy, the authorities were fined 20,000 francs and a strict curfew was imposed for 3 months. Earlier, in April 1941, the town of Moulins had a 400,000 franc fine slapped on it. Printed warnings not to listen to the Judeo-communist propaganda of the BBC and threats of consequences if so doing were handed out, and the Germans also tried to incorporate the V into their own propaganda in occupied countries, especially after their invasion of Russia in June 1941. A good example of this is the overnight appearance in Paris on the 19th and 20th of July 1941 of many large red placards displaying a white V and a swastika, and under these the words "Victory, the triumph of Germany, which is constructing the new Europe." In Vichy France, arrests were made, jamming of broadcasts from London was undertaken, and fines were imposed too. Now, against the broadcasting from London, the two radio authorities in France continued to present their programs to the nation. These authorities were Radio Paris in the occupied zone and Radio Vichy, or La Radiodiffusion Nationale, French national broadcasting, in the unoccupied zone. These both continued operation after the Germans occupied the whole of France in November 1942. Apart from plays, serials, variety programs, music, other cultural offerings, sport and current affairs, etc., both stations broadcast regular news bulletins, 5 daily from Radio Paris and 3 from Radio Vichy. By 1943, this had risen up to 12 from Radio Paris and up to 8 from Radio Vichy. Radio Paris was completely under German control, and Radio Vichy reflected the pro-German sympathies of the Pétain regime, with both stations lauding the glorious victories of the German Reich, especially after its invasion of Russia in June 1941, and the importance of the new order in the new united Europe, while always emphasizing the weakness and treachery of Britain and its allies. Millions turned into the daily broadcasts of Philippe Henriot on Radio Vichy and Jean-Hérolde Paqui on Radio Paris, with both using anti-Allied and anti-Semitic propaganda to the utmost. Henriot went on to become Vichy's Minister of Propaganda before he was assassinated by the resistance in June 1944. One of Paqui's favorite themes was "Comme Carthage, l'Angleterre sera détruite." Like Carthage, England will be destroyed. He fled to Switzerland in 1945, but was handed over to France, put on trial, and found guilty and executed in October of that year. On occasions, before regular programs from London started, the announcer would ask listeners to wait while personal messages, quelques messages personnels, were broadcast. These were seemingly random statements, Jacques has a red hat, for example, without any real meaning except to those who understood the coded language being used. The resistance. As the war progressed, the number of personal messages increased, and with the build-up to D-Day, these increased even more. Immediately before this event, the BBC broadcast the first few lines of Paul Verlaine's poem, Chanson d'automne, Song of Autumn, advising resistance groups that the invasion would start within the next 24 hours. Following the D-Day landings, the BBC continued its efforts to uplift French morale and spirits, make appeals for action to certain key sectors of the population, such as doctors, railway personnel, telecommunication workers and students, and in a period of great confusion and disruptive rumour, keep the population involved of the Allies' true progress against the Germans, both in France and elsewhere. Now, on the 17th of August 1944, Radio Vichy ceased its broadcasts, and on the 18th of August, Radio Paris did the same after its German and French employees had destroyed its files and then made their escape to Metz and then to Germany. By late August, the official La Radiodiffusion de la Nation Française, the broadcasting authority of the French nation, was on the air, broadcasting freely from those transmitters which the Germans had not destroyed as they left the country. On the 22nd of November 1944, the words Ici Londres, les Français parlent aux Français were heard for the last time as the BBC's broadcasts to wartime France were no longer necessary. Letters of thanks had started to arrive soon after this, a good example of which is one sent on the 3rd of December 1944 from a Monsieur Godard, who was a teacher in Véran in the Burgundy region. Along with his thanks for everything the BBC had done, he enclosed a poem written by his daughter Marcelle, in which she makes reference to it as the sacred voice of liberty throughout the dark days of the occupation. Surely this is a most fitting tribute to all those involved in the BBC's broadcast to France during the Second World War. Thank you for listening to me today.
Ici Londres. Veuillez écouter maintenant quelques messages personnels. L'éléphant s'est cassé une défense. Nous répétons, l'éléphant s'est cassé une défense.